Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great honor and pleasure of serving as minister of this congregation. Our community is striving to be as varied of the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. So whoever you are, whoever you've been, and whoever you are trying to become, I invite you to bring your whole self here and now. We are a covenantal community, which means very simply that we make promises to each other about how we are together, when we are together. And in this time of continuing pandemic, wearing masks for now when we are in worship and in concurrent religious education is part of our covenant with each other. We also expect, as part of our covenant, that if you are joining us for in-person activities, you are vaccinated as you can be against COVID-19. And related to that, starting on May 7th, your board has voted that masking in worship and in concurrent religious education will be optional. So it will still be welcome. You are welcome to mask if you'd like to, but it will not be required starting May 7th, which is 2 Sundays from now. If you're in a small group and there are concerns among some or all in that group that you would like to mask when you are in that smaller group, you are empowered and welcome to make that decision. And I encourage you to use the lowest denominator approach. So if there is one person who has a need, that the group try to accommodate to that one need. And we create processes where we can share what we need honestly and openly. So May 7th, Mass will be optional. Until then, please keep wearing them in worship. I extend a special welcome to any visitors this morning and invite you to fill out a guest information card. If you're joining us on YouTube, our administrator, Mary Weiss, will post a link to that in the chat right now. If you're here with us in person, please join us for social hour after the service, and there will be an alcove with a welcome center where you could fill out a yellow sheet of paper if you want to stay in touch with us. And we will have a social hour and lunch right after the service in Goddard, which is just behind you and to your left out those double doors and across the patio. We'll have coffee, iced tea, lemonade, snacks, and there will be lunch for sale for $10. The kitchen ministry has a salad plate of ground turkey, lettuce wraps, green salad, and potato salad, and there is a vegetarian option. That'll be $10 if you'd like to join us for lunch today. If it's your first time here, or if you haven't gotten a free lunch, lunch is on us. So join us for lunch if it's your first time. A few other announcements. We have a busy morning here on campus. As always, our grief and loss group will meet in the read room at 12:15. The Bible study will resume again and meet in, this is a room change, Servetus, the Servetus room, which is the one all the way at the end of the children's courtyard on the left. Find Jamili or someone who looks like they know their way around if you don't know where that is. And also in this room here at 12 o'clock, we will have a forum on the Holland project, which is the planned construction for this corner of the building, replacing the HVAC, which is, hallelujah, still working this morning. But some mornings doesn't work. Maybe bathrooms and the idea of a ramp. So if you want to get an update on that and ask questions about the options you'll be asked to vote on at annual meeting, please come back here at 12. So eat your lunch quickly if you're going to that. This morning, we will be exploring the meaning behind the world religions wheel, right behind me. Maybe I don't have to duck too much. As many of you know, a task force has been collecting feedback on this wheel this spring, and many people have been asking for a briefing on what all these symbols mean. So today, we're covering that. But before we go there, we will start by welcoming each other to this space. So please turn to a neighbor that you don't know well and ask them how they know they are in a religious or sacred or special place. If you're joining us online, you're welcome to put your answers in the chat now. Unplanned but lovely, is the first word of the Upanishads, one of the sacred texts of Hinduism. Pronounced A-U-M in our English phonetic language. It's at 10 o'clock on the wheel. Hindu philosophy says that this was the sound that came first, before the humans and the animals, before the heartbeats and the multicelled organisms, before there were plants and bacteria, before there was even light. There was this sound. Aum was all that was. Aum is called the primordial sound of creation. Out of this sound came everything, and because of this sound, all that is. So some Hindus say. And beyond the symbolism of the word is the timeline, in the timeline of creation, the different aspects of this visual form of Aum are meaning-filled too. The large lower curve on the bottom left of it is meant to signify the normal waking state, the world as we perceive it with our senses. The upper curve, attached to that lower curve, indicates the unconscious state, deep sleep, total unawareness. That middle curve signifies dream state, somewhere between waking and deep sleep, where the subconscious is at work. The dot up above symbolizes enlightenment, a state of harmony with all creation. And that crescent that holds the dot separates the three stages from enlightenment. Some believe that when we chant Aum, we can momentarily transcend the material world and feel enlightened, transcendent. When we utter this sound intentionally, we can connect with the holiest of holies, with our beginnings, with our interdependence with all that is. Aum, beginnings, primordial, temporary transcendence. What a better way to start a service.
Okay. Oh, there we are. Good morning. My name is Wendy Gordon-Weeks, and I will be your worship associate this morning. Please join me in saying our words for chalice lighting by Betts Winnicky. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us. Now, if you have a candle or a chalice at home, please light it with me as we light our chalice here in Holland.
Would you please stand and, as you are able in body and spirit, and respond in song. With heart and mind, the words will be projected over my shoulder there. It's 300 in the hymnal, although it's to a different tune if you are looking at the hymnal. With heart and mind and voice and hand may we this time and space transcend to make our purpose understood, adhere to our mortal good, a firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path to threat impedes wherever light of conscience leads. Our martyrs died so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart whose search makes love the spirit of our church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside. Thank you. Please be seated.
You sound great. We're getting warmed up. Before we get into our own wheel and the other symbols on it, I'd like to introduce you to how another church did it. The church we're going to be talking about is the Charles Street Meeting House in Boston, Massachusetts. From 1949 to 1964, Reverend Kenneth Patton, although he would prefer that I drop the Reverend, so Kenneth Patton was the minister there. The Charles Street Meeting House was previously an African Methodist Episcopal church that moved to a different place in Boston, and the Universalists bought it as a church plant to revive Universalism in the city of Boston. And here's a quote talking about what the intention of this revival was. Since Universalist traditional message that a loving God would not condemn anyone to hell had been accepted by other denominations, Universalists needed a new focus and a wider scope. Patton's 15-year ministry redefined the meaning of the word universalism by bringing the arts of all religions and cultures into a religion for one world. So, I'm going to show you some pictures, and projectionists are going to get this up for me. So this is the Charles Street Meeting House today. Right now, it is condos. I think I heard some Bostonians wondering, where's this church? Oh, yeah. It's condos now, so it's no longer a church. But until the 1970s, 80s, it was a church. Tell me what you notice about this. Shout it out, and I'll repeat it back. There's a bell tower. Arched windows, yeah, It just looks like a church, right? Looks like a pretty typical New England church. It's brick, but it's, okay. Okay, here is the inside. All right. So tell me what you see here, and I will point it out with my little red dot. Someone shout out, what do you see in this picture? Pews, but the pews are in a circle. There was something else people saw. A globe on the floor. Yeah, there's actually a painting of the world in the middle of the pews. The universe, the galaxy Andromeda is painted behind, it's kind of the focal point, right? And it's tall. That's got to be 25, 30 feet tall, like the length of the room. Where usually there would be a cross or a religious symbol, there is the galaxy Andromeda. What else do you see? There's a library, yeah. There's a bookshelf. Usually where Wendy and I would be sitting right now, there's a bookshelf filled with books. It looks like a living room. There was something? Bob, what was it? Gallery. You mean this? The balcony? Yeah. What's here? Anybody recognize any of those? They're world religion symbols. And if you notice, some of them are on either side of the galaxy Andromeda, too. They're two...
I was just going to say, it looks like it's in the round.
It looks like it's in the round. It is in the round. Although I'd want to be facing the galaxy Andromeda myself. Right? Anything else you noticed? Anything we missed or I missed hearing? It is not a chalice. That's an interesting thing, but it is a circle. There was a theory that Ken Patton was the first to light a flaming chalice to make a chalice three-dimensional. It has been disproven. That is just a circle that we're going to talk about later. Anything else you see? Anything we missed? It's pretty cool. So Ken Patton recruited two of his members, siblings, Ralph and Charlotte Edlund, to create all of those world religion symbols. He actually painted the galaxy Andromeda himself. Someone walked in and he was on his knees on the floor painting it himself. But all of these, he convinced his people to have Friday night work nights, where they basically imagined the different world religion symbols. And they created many of them themselves, which is complex. They created symbols for other faith traditions, which is not how I would recommend doing it, but it's an interesting exercise. They created 64 religious symbols in all. And these things, as you can tell from size, they're bigger than my head, right? The different symbols. There were 64 of them that were created, mostly made out of metal by Ralph and Charlotte Edlund. And there's a range of religions represented. Various Asian religions, Shinto, different Chinese traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, African practices, paganism, Norse and Celtic practices, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Greek and Roman symbols, indigenous symbols from a variety of cultures. And there were also universal symbols, quote unquote, as Ken Patton called them. That circle is a universal symbol. He also created, it's hard to see in this picture, but I can show you a picture later. This one on top of the bookshelf is an atom, a model of an atom. And he would light the atom at the beginning of services to set the cosmological scale for worship. And there were some prehistoric symbols too, a fire wheel, a sickle and wheat, a hand and hammer. The atom was one of the modern symbols, and there were many secular what we'd identify as secular symbols. There was a model of, it's not here, I can't see it, but x equals a function of y was actually one of the things they created to represent mathematics. There were brushes and a palette to represent art, a circle and pine trees of cooperation representing love, a lamp of knowledge, the sword and scales for representing justice, an owl to represent wisdom, a torch representing knowledge and wisdom, a dove and olive branch, and the United Nations symbol. We're all in this sacred space. These symbols, for the most part, have been all preserved, and they are on display at Star King School for the Ministry. Maybe we'll have Jamili go and take some pictures for us. So we've been looking at our world religion symbols this year, but we haven't gotten quite as carried away as Patton did in his context yet, right? But Friday night, no, I'm just kidding. We won't have a Friday night work night. But so the impetus for us looking at this wheel of our own this year came because a number of our members noticed that some things were missing. Traditions that were very important to them were missing from this wheel. We'll talk about what those traditions were in a bit. And the conversations evolved beyond even just world religions. How do we create symbols that represent all of who we are? What I love about what Patton did is he went into the secular realm and said, how do we represent science, math, art? Because these things are all important to our spirituality too. This wheel that we're going to dive into now was gifted to the congregation in 1968 by Professor Clyde Watson, and it was based on a 1955 Life magazine image. And if a sermon is not the best way for you to receive what these different things mean, there's a little picture next to the American flag over there. There's a picture frame that holds a much shorter description of what all these symbols are. So we've talked about Om, which is at 10 o'clock, the symbol just above Wendy's head. Let me get this one, right? Anybody recognize the one below it? Taoism, yeah, we see the yin-yang, which many of us recognize. Anybody know what the things around it are called? Eightfold Path, not quite. Trigrams, who said trigrams? Oh, Eb, wonderful. So yes, the yin-yang and the trigrams, my understanding is the various movements of the world, or Taoism is about going with the way and following in and not letting go. Right, into the world. But the yin-yang is more of it's a symbol that has influenced many different Chinese philosophies over time, not just Taoism. Also had significant influence on Confucianism and Chinese folk traditions. So this symbol, in some ways, has a colonizer imprint on it. It is, in some ways, an amalgamation of different things to say, here, they do something in this place we call China, and we think it's this one thing. At this point in time, when the Life magazine article was created and when the wheel was presented, there was a sense within the conversation, the scholarly conversation about world religions, there was a stuckness in religion having to look like one thing. And that one thing was Jewish and Christian and in some ways Muslim practices of the West. And so mostly Western trained religious people went east and said, Buddhism doesn't really look like a religion. They kind of just live this way. It's more of a culture. The conversation has evolved since then, and we've broadened our understanding of what religion is. It is the way that influence our daily practices. So my understanding looking at this is that this is representing Taoism, but Taoism is not the only religion or philosophy in China, right, in the Chinese traditions. Go to a next one. Anybody know the other circular one here? Buddhism. What do we call the symbol? Dharma wheel, yes. Representing the karmic cycles of samsara, that this idea that we are stuck in cycles of birth and rebirth until we exit them through enlightenment. Now, there are many different Buddhist traditions across the world, at least 4 major camps, if you would, or 4 major different practices, different manifestations of Buddhist philosophy. All of them utilize the 4, or put their foundation in the 4 noble truths, which are that dukkha, suffering, exists, period, full stop. Number 2 is that suffering is caused by craving and desire and attachment to worldly things. Number 3 is that we can be released from suffering. And 4 is the way to release from suffering is, Brian? The Eightfold Path. There it is. I knew it was going to come in. We're going to move now into an experience of a Buddhist metta meditation. Metta in Sanskrit means loving kindness. In a metta meditation, we seek to cultivate metta, loving kindness, for ourselves, for those we love, and lastly, for those we might be opposed to. We are going to do this through spoken aloud. We will then sing a song, and during that song you will be invited, I'll remind you later, but you will be invited to name out loud the loving kindness you want to send to yourself, the loving kindness you want to send to those in your inner circle, and the loving kindness you want to send beyond that inner circle out to the world. So get comfortable in your body, ground yourself, relax your shoulders, do whatever you need to do to stay grounded. Rest your hands somewhere so they're not fiddling. I know my hands always fiddle. To help us focus and gain some initial stability, let's bring our attention and our awareness to the breath at the belly. Inhale, noticing the breath fall down your body and fill your belly. And exhale, noticing the sensations of breath. Metta is a practice of getting close to joy. So I invite you to bring to mind someone who you really believe has your best interest at heart. Someone who you know loves you. Someone who has extended kindness and support to you. This could be someone you know now or someone you knew long ago, a friend, a family member, a teacher, a colleague. Choose just one person and bring them to mind as though they were seated right in front of you. Imagine them truly wishing for you to be happy and fulfilled, for you to have a life that is flourishing. Imagine them beaming this look towards you with their smile, with their eyes, with their posture. And with your next breaths, inhale and draw in the intention of the goodness they are sending your way. Take a few more breaths and keep bringing in that goodness, that joy, that happiness that is radiating from that person. And now, thank that person Bid them well on their journey and let them go. And notice how your body feels. You might feel warm or happy, nostalgic, or a sense of missing that person. Relax into the sensations you are having for a couple breaths. With this feeling of support and happiness, you can now extend that to others. Bring them joy. Bring to mind someone in your life who could really use an extra boost. A friend, a family member, a colleague. Again, bring them to mind vividly as though they were sitting right in front of you. And without thinking about all the stories and the thoughts and ideas, just call upon the experience of wishing this person to be truly happy, truly fulfilled, truly joyful. As you inhale, draw in this intention, and as you exhale, wish this person happiness, fulfillment, flourishing. Do that twice more. Inhale the intention and exhale the flourishing, the fulfillment, the happiness. Release the image of this person, bid them well, and once again, just notice what your body is feeling. Take another deep breath and exit the practice.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. I think particularly of the joy of the beauty of the Sonoran Desert this time of year. And I also hold sorrow for the continued mistreatment of transgender people. Let us remember those desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking right now through our desert without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner. No more deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 23902468. If any of you here in the sanctuary wish to put your thoughts up on Menti, Brian Moon can help you with that. If you are here in person, you're welcome to come up to the table and put a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. The pebbles create ripples of hope.
I'll read our Menti responses out loud, and then we will move into a sung metta loving kindness meditation. Just one submitted today, a love of this community and pain that there is so much hurt in the world. We all hold that tension, love and pain. In a moment, you'll be invited to sing a song that you might know, May I Be Filled with Loving Kindness. It is from our teal hymnals. We are going to sing it through 4 times. 3 different pronouns are used throughout the service, throughout the song. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be filled with loving kindness. May we be filled with loving kindness. And we will pause for a verse after we sing each of those pronouns. And after you sing, may I be filled with loving kindness, you are invited to voice out loud or say in your heart, whichever works better for you, your prayers of loving kindness for yourself, the loving kindness you wish for yourself. After we sing, may you be filled with loving kindness, those prayers of loving kindness for those in your inner circle, whoever that is. And then after, may we be filled with loving kindness, your prayers for the larger world. Just speak them out loud, popcorn style. Whoever hears it will take it as a blessing. And then after we've said out loud the 3rd time, we will sing, may we be filled with loving kindness again.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole.
Say out loud or in your heart all those prayers you have for yourself.
May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole.
And those blessings of loving kindness for those in your inner circle, again, say them out loud or in your heart.
May you find your way. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
And now your prayers and blessings for the wider world.
May we be filled with other kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
May we make it so, and amen, and blessed be. We are now moving into a review of the religious symbols that I think are more recognizable to some of you. And this one I'm shifting to more, because they are recognizable symbols, sharing some feedback we received from those of you who grew up in Jewish and Christian and Muslim traditions. So, what is this symbol? A menorah. Close. It's a temple menorah. It is not a Hanukkah that we use over Hanukkah. There is too few places on this for that. This is a temple menorah that would be used in early Jewish temples and some temples today. Some feedback that the team received on this symbol is that the Star of David might be a more appropriate contemporary representation of Judaism. The Star of David has its origins in Jewish printers who were marking their ancestry and were trying to differentiate their book from their competitors. So showed that they were Jewish books, almost like a capitalistic enterprise. The Star of David was invented, had little religious meaning, really, initially. And then, as many of us know, it was used during World War II to denote those people who were of Jewish origin. And since World War II, there has been what I see as a reclamation of the Star of David as a proud wearing of one's religious identity, a proud display, as if we were all books that those printers first imagined and printed the Star of David on. Some other feedback we heard in the process was that some people see the Star of David as one that has come to symbolize the Israeli government, and we have complex feelings around the Israeli government. Not Israel, I'm saying different thing, Israeli government, right? Complex feelings. It's complex, by and large, cultural and religious Jews within our congregation and beyond have some agreements that a Star of David will be a more appropriate symbol for whatever we are imagining next. Okay. Next one. Anybody know what this is? It's a cross. Anybody know what type of cross? I know someone here does. It looks a little different than the crosses usually see, yeah? This is something, looks either Greek or Syrian style cross, as far as I could tell. Not the Latin cross, which is very simple, straight lines, straight, thin lines. Most of the feedback we received on this cross was, why is it at the top? It could have been subconscious. It is certainly not saying in our community that Christianity has a precedence over other traditions, but some people might walk in not knowing that and say, oh, the cross is at the top. Okay, the last one, well, one of the last ones. Anybody know what this is? Islam, yeah. Anybody know what it says? Can anybody read Arabic? I hear it. Someone said it. Someone else. Thank you, Margot. Yes. It is Shahada, there is no God but Allah. There is no God but God, which is one of the central understandings of Islam. Again, feedback we received here from people who grew up Muslim in this congregation and beyond is that the crescent moon or crescent moon and star are more appropriate representations of Islam. An interesting point someone raised with me is that Islam is not just an Arabic religion, so it doesn't have to be just represented by the Arabic language. It's a religion of all languages. We'll come back in a second. But first, we have to do another piece.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. If you are joining us on live stream, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. If you're here in person, the ushers will come around now with the offering baskets to collect your donations.
La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Allah, Allah, Allah. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Allah, Allah, Allah. Rahman Rahim, As-Salam Alim. Rahman Rahim, As-Salam Alim. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. الجبار الغفار المجيد الحميد الجبار الغفار المجيد الحميد لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله 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 الحار السمار النور الصبور الحار السمار النور الصبور لا إله إلا الله 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 Allah. You just heard Reverend Summer Al-Bayati, who's a Unitarian Universalist minister and also a Muslim, and she serves the Pacific Western region expertise in small congregations. We have one more symbol to dissect. Anyone know what the last one is? Flaming chalice. It is. A little bit of a trick question. I'm sure that some of you had heard the origin story, but I'll share it with those who don't know about it. The flaming chalice was initially conceived by the Unitarian Service Committee in the 1930s and 40s. At the time, the Unitarian Service Committee's primary mission was to help people escape Nazi Germany and Nazi Europe. And this logo, much like the Star of David, was created out of necessity, not necessarily a religious imagination. Reverend Dr. Susan Ritchie describes the process of creating this in her pamphlet. She says, "The design has been hastily put together by the artist Hans Deutsch, himself a refugee. Deutsch was working under the direction of the USC's director, Reverend Charles Joy, who believed that such a logo would make their paperwork look more official. Reverend Joy would later claim that the design was reminiscent of the lamps of holy oil used by the ancient Greeks and Romans on their altars, and that the flame itself represented a spirit of helpfulness and sacrifice. There has always been a lack of clarity regarding Deutsch's original intentions, which were quite possibly not highly developed." When the Unitarians and the Universalists merged about 2 decades later, we started to put those 2 circles around the chalice, representing Unitarianism and Universalism. And something else that initial chalice gained, and when you're looking at it, one of the early ones I'm thinking of is this one in the upper left-hand corner of the slide. You see the 2 circles there. Ours also has 2 circles. And you see in many of these early chalices that the light, the flame, or the chalice itself is offset. Right? These earlier ones, it's offset. That is something we inherited from the symbol of Universalism. The Christian Universalist symbol was 1 circle with a cross, a small cross, offset off to the right. And the intention behind that was that they were making room. They acknowledged that they had roots in Christianity, but they were making room for an expression of other religious traditions, many of the ones that Ken Patton later brought into representation in his sanctuary. Only in 2015, a little bit earlier than that, 2007-8, did the UUA's official chalice become centered like this, and some people think that we lost something in centering the chalice and not having it offset, having that initial intention. It wasn't until the 1970s, from the 60s to the late 70s, the chalice was pretty much a 2-dimensional object. It was something printed on things, stamped on things. And sometime in the 1970s, some UU curriculum in religious education started to focus on the 2D models of the chalice and encourage kids, to make them 3-dimensional. And sometime between 1975 and 1985, according to Reverend Betty Jo Middleton, the chalice was brought down from the downstairs up into the sanctuary for those churches that have downstairs, or from the children's courtyard over to Holland Sanctuary. So it was the youth and the children and the RE teachers who made our chalice 3-dimensional. Yes, thank you for them. Whoever whoop whoop, that was appropriate. There we are. In the early 2000s, a survey so sometime in the mid-1980s, by then many UU congregations were lighting a chalice or had a 3-dimensional chalice in their space. But in the early 2000s, a survey was conducted of UU worship styles across congregations. And one thing the surveyors asked about was the elements in the congregation's worship. And somehow, lighting a chalice was left off. Even though it was left off of the list of things to check if you do this in your worship services, a majority of congregations by the year 2000 independently reported lighting a chalice. So certainly there were dozens of others that did not include their chalice lighting in that. I will note that I don't think I've ever been to a UU congregation where a chalice hasn't been lit. What does the symbol of the chalice mean? Again, Reverend Dr. Susan Ritchie says that lighting the chalice signals the entry of the gathered community into a sacred space, whether that be worship or a meeting or a gathering, small group ministry. Many congregations also extinguish their chalice, as we do, which Richie says is most often a reminder that those who have gathered together now carry the warmth of human community and the light of truth with them throughout the week. Richie's question to us is, what is the symbolism of the flaming chalice for you personally? If you've not reflected on this before, think about what the cup or bowl might mean, what the flame might mean, and what the two mean together. So we have covered our existing world religions wheel. What's missing? Anybody know? Anything missing from the wheel? Indigenous religions. Pagan beliefs, yes, that's a big one we heard. Some of the impetus for relooking at this. If we can go to the next slide, AV team. There was been a request from many of the pagans, who is many of us, to represent the tree of life. This is Ken Patton's tree of life. This is closer to what the pagans in our congregation are imagining to represent pagan beliefs. There's also been a request from someone in our congregation to include, the next slide, the 9-pointed star, which is a symbol for the Baha'i faith. 9 in Baha'i tradition is perfection, so this is a perfected symbol. We've also begun to imagine, if anybody has seen, I don't have a picture of this one, but a humanist person. Humanism, which many of us are, has a symbol. It is kind of a person like this. It's very simple and just with a head on top of it. So we've imagined that into the proposal we're thinking about. Something else the team began to focus on as we were collecting feedback on this wheel and then imagining what's missing was that we needed a medium that was a little more flexible than wood, literally. We needed to be, whatever the medium was, to be able to change and shift with us. We needed to be able to add to it more easily. Can you imagine, where would we put the tree of life here? There's no space, and it's secured on there pretty well. So the team is considering that we might put this on quilts, things that could be added to. There could be a standard way of doing it, but then they could be moved around even and hung in different places, like Ken Patton adorned his sanctuary. And like Ken Patton, we might also consider non-religious symbols to communicate, and many of you had ideas on this. Someone suggested, what about an Erlenmeyer flask as a symbol that we respect and inspire science? Maybe it was someone individually, because I'm seeing the puzzling. Our current world religions wheel, as well as the other symbols in this sacred space, communicate who we are. The walls, the stained glass windows, the chairs, the piano, the papers and pamphlets, the things we hang, they all communicate something of who we are, implicitly or explicitly. What is missing, and how else could we visually communicate and verbally communicate what is core to our faith? Part of the World Religions Task Force's vision is that we create something that can change alongside us. We are a living tradition, which means that we are always changing and growing. And we have many sources of inspiration among us. And every new person who walks through our doors might be bringing inspiration we haven't even considered. So we might represent that better on quilts or hangings more than wood. We can be guided by this question in our thinking of what we do with our sacred space and how we adorn it. Who are we becoming? I think back to that picture we saw of the Charles Street Meeting House. If nothing else, you would think if you walked into this space, well, this is different, right? I'm not sure you would be able to clearly say who they were, but they were setting themselves apart, if nothing else. What do visitors and new folks say, feel, hear when they come into our sacred space? And what do we wish they would feel and hear and say? I was in a community meeting recently where they were looking for a space to host an event for trans youth in particular. And a few other clergy were there and said that while they could technically host the event, the visual symbols in their sacred space might be triggering or off-putting for trans persons and their families, considering the anti-trans rhetoric coming from many right-wing Christians. Not because those churches weren't welcoming, but because of the association with the cross. In the context of that conversation, I was able to offer, because of this world religion symbol, that there could be more welcoming. We had more expression of the various religions in our space. It was just a more welcoming environment. So what our space looks like really matters. We are at a time when we are imagining new ways of representing ourselves to whomever comes into the space. Our mission as a congregation is to transform ourselves by intentionally living our UU principles. Where is transformation visibly represented here? Ken Patton had some things right, and I think you might agree with me that he got a little bit carried away. But he understood the power of symbols to communicate more than words alone can. And he wrote some beautiful words, too. We'll end this reflection today with a reading from him. This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature. It is a house of friendship, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in a community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiworks. It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present in visions of growth and progress. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. It is good to be on this endeavor with you.
Our final song is Peace, Salam, Shalom by Emma's Revolution. The words are complicated. It's peace, salam, shalom. That's all. And after you catch the melody, I'm going to depart and sing some other stuff. Try not to follow me. just keep singing peace, salam, shalom. And we have plants in the audience that know the song. Hopefully they will sing loud. As you are willing and able, stand and feel free to sway as you choose. I'll start singing it and see if you can catch it with me. Peace, salam, shalom. 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 I believe in peace. You believe in peace. We believe in peace. We believe in peace. We will work for peace. You will work for peace. We will work for peace.
Shalom.
Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Let's be seated.
Now please join me in our words of chalice extinguishing from Reverend Maureen Killeran. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.